Stephen Conroy, we saw this week the Victorian government really bouncing to the beat of Beijing when the Treasurer was out there and basically sort of admonishing the federal government for the handling of this situation. God forbid, actually, the destruction of the Victorian economy would be something he would be interested in at least finding out more information about. We also saw today the Transport Minister basically refused to get involved in a conversation about how much of the public works spending that's coming in Victoria will be coming from China through its Belt and Road initiative. As a proud Labor man, as a proud Victorian, has the Victorian government lost the plot when it comes to Chinese dollars versus Australian sovereignty?
Well, there's a couple of different issues that you've wrapped up into one there, Paul. I mean, firstly, the Victorian government supported the Morrison government, and I'm with Pauline on this. That's getting to be far too common. That Morrison deserves congratulations for not being intimidated, and he had the full support, bipartisan and tripartisan, including Pauline, across politics. So the Victorian government were on board with that. The issue around whether or not the Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI as people call it, is going to be somehow drawn down as part of the Victorian government's borrowings was a bit of a red herring. It was a good one, but it was a very long bow. And I don't think there's been any suggestion at any stage by anybody that the Victorian government were going to use a debt facility from the Chinese government. And notwithstanding the agreement having been signed now, I think 18 months ago, if not more, at this stage, nothing concrete has come from that. And as always, the initiatives, whether they're infrastructure or whatever, will need to pass the Foreign Investment Review Board, which the Victorian government don't have a vote on. And it will run the rule over initiatives that are put forward with the support of the Chinese government. And if they're not considered to be contrary to our national security interests, then they will be allowed, as they should be, to go ahead. This is not about saying China should have no involvement in Australia, but it's saying there are areas where Australia reserves the right, like the Chinese government do, to not allow Chinese participation in key identified areas.
Cory, could you translate that to normal people's language, please?
Yeah, basically, Stephen's tacitly admitting that the Victorian government is captured by the Chinese Communist Party and needs all their cash,
Correct.
But he doesn't want to say it in those words. That's the short version, Stephen.
Look, I'm sorry, Cory, but you've tried to verbal me many times in the past, and I'm not going to let you get away.
But hang on, but when you say, Stephen, that there's bipartisan support, okay, I understand at the federal level, but at the state level, you had the Treasurer come out and say that the federal government's handling of the relationship was essentially the retaliation from China was thoroughly deserved because of the way that we had provoked them. That's what I'm talking about here. And you're a bloke who's never been afraid to call out China. What I find amazing is that we've got Mark McGowan afraid to do it, Palaszczuk afraid to do it, you've got this Treasurer afraid to do it, many other people, billionaires, media owners, all the rest of it, that are very much worth pointing out. I just don't understand how when a virus kills 300,000 people, Australia champions an inquiry into it, and their reaction is to punish our farmers and draw up a long list of other people they're going to do in, that anyone's response wouldn't be, no, sorry, you've gone too far in your response. It's disproportionate to the affront you think you've suffered.
Look, there's two separate issues, Paul. All three of the governments you mentioned supported the Morrison government inquiry, not McGowan, not Palaszczuk, not Pallas Andrews, said for a moment they did not support that. So it is not accurate for you to portray that they were not supporting the government on that issue.
But they've all bitched and moaned at what the consequence of asking for that inquiry is.
On the substance that you made, and I want to congratulate you on your opening monologue, where you detailed just some. There are many, many more. I think my favourite, if you can just use those words, is the threat by the Chinese government's ambassador in Germany, that if Germany didn't agree to let Huawei build their 5G network, the million German cars imported into China would be declared unsafe. The change here is China's behaviour. China have identified a raft of countries around the world, and they are intimidating them. So for those in Australia who say, oh, it's Morrison's fault, it's not. China have changed their game plan. They have ripped the mask off and they are not hiding anymore. I'm loath ever to quote Malcolm Turnbull, as you would well know.
Well, I was going to say, watch out or I'll cut your mic off.
I know. But he made the point on the cyber stuff you mentioned earlier. China no longer care when they're caught. They are so arrogant, they are so drunk on their growing power that they don't care when you catch them red-handed. And that's what the debate needs to be about around the world. It's China have changed its entire behaviour.
Yeah. Cory, I want to get Pauline in here, so yeah?
Yeah, Paul, just quickly, I agree with what Stephen said about China, but I want to contrast what the premiers have done with what the federal government has done. The federal government, I think, has recognised there is going to be a massive economic impact of this coronavirus and the consequences of decisions that have been taken, but they're using that as an opportunity to recalibrate the balance of power or the existing relationship with China, pushing back a little bit, not giving in to the bullying. Daniel Andrews and McGowan and all these others are just tiptoeing around it and trying to be appeasement and apologist, as Lenin said, useful idiots for it, because they're not prepared to adjust the future.